Hello, fellow Americans. Welcome to Right Wing News. I'm your host, the voice of reason. And this particular post I found on thetrumpmedia.com. Don't let the name confuse you, meaning, that it's biased, because much of the information contained within it comes from, of all places, the Washington Compost, as well as the Angry Patriot Movement. Several different sources are compiled here. But what's nice to note here is Congress is beginning to take steps to stop Obama's attempt at a coup to undermine President Trump. And, while that's appreciated and great, it's not enough. It's not enough until the mainstream media, number one, is on board. Number two, until they're dragging this clown through the mud, tar and feathering him. Because, the fake news that I've been called, and others like me in the alternative media, we've known about this since long before this clown left the Oval Office. We've known that he was going to be setting up what many just termed a shadow government, with the express purpose, this shadow government, by the way, just so there's no question about who's part of it, it's Obama's former national security team. They've set up a communications infrastructure, and they are together. They're raising a war chest. I believe the last count I saw yesterday, I want to say it was like 42 million or something. Don't quote me on the dollar amount that they collected, but for the sole purpose of undermining President Trump. And folks, for anybody that would, number one, say that this is normal or acceptable, the other people who would be liberals, because they just never have any facts. Let me just stop them dead in their tracks right there. This is sedition. Alright? Anytime that you are inciting people to rebel against a lawful authority or government, that's sedition. And that is exactly what Obama is doing. Okay? Furthermore, it's one thing for there to be political discourse. Discourse meaning discussion, not meaning burning things, not meaning flipping cop cars, not meaning threatening to kill people, not meaning beating people, etc. I think you might get my point there. It's perfectly normal to have political debate, but what is not normal is and it's normal considering who the parties are. It's you and me as private citizens, when not just the former president, the prior president is setting up, like I said, a war chest to combat the sitting president. There's nothing in history for a precedent on that. And this guy needs to be dealt with before unthinkable things begin to happen. Plain and simple. Many of our nation's highest-ranking military members, including four-star admirals, four-star generals that dealt with this clown in the Middle East, say that he's guilty of treason for aiding and abetting. Anybody not familiar with the legal constitutional definition of treason, I want to say it's Article 3, Section 3, I believe. But the point is to be guilty of treason, one only needs to attempt to help the enemy. Whether or not he was successful or not is irrelevant. And there's no question Obama has tried on more than enough occasions. I think we can determine by public record that there's at least enough to warrant an indictment for an investigation, and one would like to think that that would lead to a guilty verdict, at which time he should be dealt with accordingly. And by accordingly, I mean executed for his acts. He's going to get a lot of people killed if he keeps this up. Again, this is sedition. This is not acceptable. So, it'll be interesting to see. It's great that some members of Congress are stepping up. It's great to see that people are recognizing that this guy is, in fact, running an operation 2 miles from the White House to deliberately undermine the White House. It's a great first step. Not enough. Not enough. Now, somebody's got a problem with executing a former president. They want to be more humanitarian. I'm fine with building the guy a 3x3 cell for the rest of his life in Leavenworth. I'll pay for it myself. Custom fitted. 3x3. No bigger. Anyway, let's talk about what Congress is recognizing here. As I said, this part of this comes from the Angry Patriots, as well as the Washington Post, as you can see here. Chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, Devin Nunes, says that he expects for the FBI to tell him, what's going on. This is as it relates to the General Michael Flynn incident. And here, once again, we have this, crocodile tears, feigned outrage by the Democrats. See, I told you he was dirty. He's been dealing with the Russians. And that is the farthest thing from the truth that there could be. And you'll see that here as we go. Representative Nunes said that he was bothered by the leaking of the Flynn videos because, as he explained, there's a complex process for the surveillance and recording of communications of the United States citizens, and then to just unmask it using our intelligence apparatus is totally unacceptable. The other committee members on the Select Committee of Intelligence have said that the most important question raised here by the whole Michael Flynn incident is why was the NSA and FBI eavesdropping on in the first place? Well, we know who was still in the Oval Office at the time. We knew who had a serious axe to grind with him at the time. If you don't, it's Obama, but assume people do at this point. And then not only tapped it, but then leaked it to the media. That's the issue here, as well as all the other leaks that, it looks like at least members of Congress, not just any members that are on the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence are beginning to realize that none other than Barack Hussein Obama, His Highness's royal flippin' ass, is the one that is behind most of this. Now, the media is not going to report that. But moving on, says Nunes was definitely correct when he said the big problem here is that the media is attempting to turn into a scandal is that a private U.S. citizen, which is what Michael Flynn was at the time, should have never had that phone call observed, recorded by federal agencies, let alone released. And, Democrats will then quickly spin along with the media and say, well, he was talking about things he should have. Number one, Barack Obama was doing the same thing in 2008, but you don't justify bad behavior with bad behavior. So I'm not going to go with that excuse because it doesn't require an excuse. You're going to learn here in just a minute. Well, I'll say it right now. When Flynn talked to the Russian ambassador, he relayed his gratitude for the country not flipping out at Barack Obama continuing to poke Russia in the eye as he was leaving office. When asked by the ambassador, especially about lifting the sanctions in the future, Flynn only said Trump would soon take office and they would look at it then. That is not negotiating sanctions, ladies and gentlemen, okay? But just the mere fact that the word sanction was said, that's what the Democrats are hanging their hat on, and it's just, there's nothing valid about the argument. The reason Michael Flynn stepped down, I believe it says here, if you didn't read the whole story, or if you got your news from the mainstream media, you might even think that decorated veteran actually had promised to do something like relieve the sanctions on Russia as soon as Trump took office. But nothing could be further from the truth. That's the story that even if they're not saying it, that the mainstream media has got the country believing. Because here you're disgracing one of America's finest, a career military official at his level. That is disgusting. It is unconscionable. Not to mention all the other issues of who's doing it, where it's coming from, what the motive is. Liberal television experts, they continue to run spectacular headlines regarding the entire Michael Flynn concern, about how Trump's administration is out of control. No! Number one, General Michael Flynn has done nothing wrong. He stepped down to stop the circus shot sideshow being created by the Democrats and the media. Why? Because he has honor, something that most Democrats couldn't even spell, much less define. So, as usual, watch this hand, but don't watch what this hand is doing. Whenever the mainstream media is focused on one story, look beyond that to try to figure out what is it they're hiding from you. All we're hearing about is the disarray of the Trump administration. There is no disarray. It was manufactured disarray by the Democrats, who are now, with their feigned outrage. Oh, Michael Flynn, talking to the Russians. It's all political theater designed to... I'm not even going to be delicate. They're targeting the idiots. And there's plenty of idiots out there to target. And I'm referring to the Democrats and anybody who watches the mainstream news and buys into the nonsense. So, they know that They've got a country that's at least 50% useful idiots that all they need to do is get a soundbite on television and nobody will do due diligence. And this is why the country is where it is.